as one. Now, the second method, which I say usually gives rise to circularity, is where we are calculating this interest directly from this schedule. So what we are saying is equal to, so most times we just say equal to your ending balance multiplied by the interest expense, interest rate, right? And you can drag that. So now let me just do for the first 2 years. So now this is what we are going to get. So let me remove what we did earlier. So because we are calculating this from this schedule itself, and we are still adding it back. So if I add it back like this, it's going to give rise to circular reference, right? This is more like the typical way of doing it, right? But as I said, let me teach us this other method and we can come back. Most times there's always a difference between you creating the schedule out and you doing it, because if you look at this, so let me click on OK, and you go to your file, come to your options, right? Come to my formulas, and I'll tick this enable iterative calculation and click on my OK. So now if I copy this to the right, so let me show the 2 decimal. So 2.3, 4.3. In the former one that we did, let's look at the difference. So this is 2 and this is 3.5. Because this is more like what? This is more like a compounding calculation. So most times we usually use this circular reference. Then when you are building your projects in house, you now need to create some kind of macro, because this is so significant, right? The normal way we've calculated this is 3.5, why this is 4.3, right? Even though if you use either of the method, your debt will still be fully repaid. But this circular reference one, where you're doing the compound, because this is what they are saying, that hey, the initial amount, calculate the interest for that period, add it. This becomes your new loan. The following period, you add the debt that you have, right? You still compound this accrued that you've calculated previous periods and add it back to this, right? But maybe one of these other series will touch base on how we treat this, right? Most times this is what we usually use, and where you create that circular, you create the macro to help you do the copy and paste. But for now, we are not going to use this one. Let's understand the basic one. So let me go back to my file and let me switch off the circular reference that I ticked, right? Iteration. So I have this. So let me delete this and let me link it to this one that we want to use. I just decided to show us that so you know, all right, because we are rounding it up. That's why it looks like SIF is the same thing. And you know, yeah, this is a billion, so it's much. Okay, so and these are our debts, and that now becomes our what? Our new debt. So let me sum this up. Enter, and let me sum this. So 28, but now because of the accrued interest, the total amount that we now need to pay would be what? Would be 34. Right? So we've taken a look at different method which we use in building our repayment schedule. And right, so part of the one we use in the previous session was PPMT. All right, and this other one we use also taking ourselves through where we use constant repayment. All right, so for this one, well, let me see, which one should we use? Which one should we use? Which one should we use? Okay, so let's see, maybe we use the amortized one, and I'm going to keep it simple. Where's our total? So our total debt that we need to pay now will now be equal to this principal, the initial, plus the accrued interest. So that will be 34. So I'll come here and I'll type my equal to a PMT, my rate. This is my rate, my number of years, number of period, which is now 5 years, right? I think we've calculated the 5 years somewhere. Okay, 5 years. Right, comma, and our present value will now be this 34. I need to pay, close my bracket, enter. It's going to show in negative. I'll put my absolute formula in front of it. So we have this, right? So let me put this in accounting formula to remove the dollar sign in front of it. Right, so this is what we have. So that means this is what we're going to pay over the repayment period. Now, this PMT formula that we use has also included the principal inside it, both principal and interest. So what we are going to do is open my brackets. So that will be this, both principal, because that's what this the PMT has done for us. Minus, we're not going to deduct the what? The interest, because we've calculated the interest already. Close the brackets. Then I'm now multiply this by what? By our repayment flag. So come down here. There's our repayments. So these are repayment mask. And I can copy this for the period. And this is what we are going to have. So at the end of the period, this will be fully repaid. This will be fully repaid. So as I said, the circular reference, maybe we touch that in another session, all right? But this is more like the typical way of you incorporating this interest during construction in your model. So different inflow period, they also try to give you that. So let's calculate our total debt service, right? So we need our principal, all right, and our interest expense. So we can get our total debt service, right? Total DS, they call it DS, total debt service. And let me just copy this format here and put it here. So, okay. So for our principal, just link that to the principal in the schedule, and our interest expense here, and we can sum both of them together. So copy this to the right, and this is what we have. So let me do this sum. Let me sum them together. Let me copy this. So which means the initial 28 debt of 28 below that we took, we'll now be paying this back using 47. Right, now let's take a look at something. What if there's no moratorium period? So let me say for this, which is the schedule one, I put this as 0. Let's look at how much we would have paid. Right, so now look at this. So we are faced with another problem now. If you look at this, typically supposed to be fully repaid everything in year 7, but there's a negative, which means it's showing that we are still paying more than what that we're supposed to pay. So I'll need to come back here, and I'm going to restrict this using a main function. So minimum of what? Minimum of my previous, minimum of this, my calculation, minimum of this, my calculation. Okay, so let me put this, my calculation, in a bracket. So minimum of this, my calculation, or my previous year ending balance. Okay, so press enter so you can see, so that it just restricts this. So loan of 28 will be paying, using that to pay back 47, 44, right? And if there's a moratorium period, when we put it back to 2 years, what will happen? Now look at this, we'll be paying 47 billion. Now remember, what I'm going to do is, let me copy this. Okay, in fact, let's still leave it like this. So the next thing that we said we want to incorporate is what this interest, should it be capitalized or no? So now let's assume we are saying no, this should not be capitalized, right? What would then happen to our interest expense? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to duplicate this interest expense. Set, you need to learn how to work smart and be able to break things down very well whenever you are building your model. So I'll just copy this, I'll put it. Okay, yeah, I think this is good. This is good. Okay, so let me see how we're going to do that very well. All right, so if the interest would be capitalized, so that means it's equal to if this, our interest capitalized, right, if it's equal to, so I'm going to keep this constant since it's a single cell input. If it's equal to, open my quotes, yes, close my quotes, what should happen? If the interest is capitalized, you should pick this value like that, right? The interest expense I've calculated. If not, right, you should just make this plus the what? The interest done in that construction, and close my bracket, enter. So drag this for the period. So let's assume the interest would not be capitalized. If I come here and I change this to no, what will happen? That means we are saying we would be paying this interest during this period, right? That means we're going to be paying that interest. So I now need to also bring the same thing into this, our total debt service, so that this will also flow. Now, what do you think? What will be the impact? What will be the impact? So if the interest is capitalized, how much are we paying? So let me sum this so that you can see the reason why they always tell you, you know what, it's better you capitalize. So over here, interest is what? Interest is, come, let me check. So we need the total capitalized, right? So if the interest is not capitalized, that means we'll be spending, just paying everything. We'll be paying the interest, right? Which would then supposed to reduce our what? Supposed to reduce our outstanding loan balance. So if it's not capitalized, that means it's interest. Then this guy, which I also need to come in here and put equal to if this is my guy, right? As I said, remember there are always more than one way of getting things done. Finance is flexible, right? So it's better is how you think it's right. So if this is equal to yes, what should happen? It should give us this interest that we are capitalizing. If not, you should just make it 0. So enter. So look at what the effect would be. So here to just be 28, right? And you can see that our interest expense that we need to pay has dropped to 15 billion. But if we turn this back to yes, now what do you think will happen? So what do you think will happen? All right, so you can see that this has increased to 37 to 34, our outstanding balance that we need to pay. Right. So let's see. Said if you are paying, what's that saying? This is what? This is 14 on our interest expense. We are capitalizing it and we are expensing it. How much would that cost us? 15. Right. And it should just also, so let's look at our repayment as well. Let's look at our repayment. So repayment 28 if it is being expensed, but if it is being capitalized, right? If it's being capitalized, then you are paying 34 billion. So you can see the benefits why the financial will tell you that, you know what, yes, you need to capitalize it. Because if you are not capitalizing it, so if I change this back to no, look at how much you are paying. You're just paying only 28. You're paying only 28. So I think our debt service, maybe this should not be linked. Let me link this. So interest expense, this should be linked. Let's just link this to what we've done here. Let's link the interest expense here equal to what we've done here. That work? Okay, well, maybe you might still need to use our if function to just get that, but I'm quite sure you understand that by now. Okay, maybe I should just do it on some product. So equal to if this is equal to, so let me keep it constant. Remember, if this is equal to yes, let me put my double quote. Yes, close my double quotes. Is equal to yes, should give us this guy. Should give us, but I think I'm supposed to even copy that formula. But let me leave that to you. Let me leave that to you as part of your own part of workings, right? So if it's yes, you can see this. We are paying almost 34 billion, right? 34 billion. The interest is not capitalized. This one just comes in, and then this will not, nothing is coming in here. right? Okay, in fact, I think that no, we were right with what we did earlier. So this should just come here as a normal typical interest expense. But okay, no, it's supposed to link it to this other one. Okay, so flexible. So if it's not capitalized, that means you are paying just 28. You pay your interest expense, all right? And this is what we are going to get, 43. But if it's being capitalized, it's capitalized, yes, what we're going to get. So 47. So you can see the difference, and one of the reasons why financials will tell you, yes, capitalize it, and the sponsor will be like, you know what, no, don't let us capitalize it, right? Because now you just need to pay 28, but if they are capitalizing it over 2 years, that means they will need to pay what? They will need to pay more, 34. So what usually happens is this: they will tell them that, you know what, we are not going to capitalize it. We're not going to capitalize it. So this 28, they will now say this interest expense that we have during this period, right, should be added back to the total capex that we need. So which means you now come into your capex again, you now create something called interest during construction, right? You create something called interest during construction, and now you're now going to link this interest that you need to pay during this construction. You now link it back. You link it back to this our calculation. And now by the time you add it to this font, then it's going to give rise to circular reference. So let me just do this. So let's assume we are adding this. It's going to show this. I click on my OK. So if I go ahead and I do this so let's see the effect, and I enable this and click on my OK, and I allow it to work. Look at what will happen. So it was 28 before, so it becomes 30 because we've now added that interest during construction. We've added it back to the total capex that we need. So most times, as I said, you create a macro. So it's that macro that will just copy this interest during construction, copy it and paste it as value, right? And also come to your funding as well, and also do the copy and pasting for what flows into your total capex, so that because definitely your users might not understand them switching on the button that was switching on. So you just you have to do your macros, you create a button that they just click and it just automatically do the copy and pasting for you. So that is how we deal with interest during construction. So let me delete this. So decide to just show us, go back to my file. So maybe one of these session we can discuss how you create macros to do your copy and paste, so to avoid all this kind of circularity when you are building your project finance model and debt funding. So now that you've built this, right, what you just need to do is to copy everything here, copy everything up to the timing. You copy it, you duplicate it for the second tranche B, which is a different loan with its own different data. You do the same thing for the third one as well, right? And once you are done, you now create a schedule that will now summarize 3 of them, and that's what will now flow straight. So this for the interest during construction. Now, how do we treat that? You are going to capitalize it. You capitalize it, right? And you treat it the same way you would treat a typical asset. And you also, which means you after the operations, the repayment starts, you then depreciate this value that has been capitalized, right? Because this would also flow into your liability. So let's take a pause here, and in our next series we will continue. And please note that if you have any question, you can always drop that in the chat box as well. And even if before us to have maybe 1 hour virtual session where we can also have further discussion around this, in case you have any question or you need more explanation. Yeah, we can always make that request. You can drop that in the chat box and we will pick that up. All right, so thank you.